A doctor walks into Versailles in 1748 with the wrong secret and doesn't walk out alive. I've spent years reading court diaries from this period. What strikes you first is how small the palace really was. Thousands of people living in corridors watching each other. No privacy, no escape. And in the spring of 1748, one man knew something that could have toppled the entire machinery of French power. His name was François Quesnay, and he was the king's physician. Louis Roman XV had ruled France for 37 years by then. On the surface, absolute power, total control. The reality, he was trapped. Trapped by court factions, trapped by his own desires, and most dangerously trapped by the woman he loved, Madame de Pompadour. She wasn't queen. She was something more dangerous, his favorite, his counselor, his mirror. Pompadour had consolidated power in ways the official court structure never intended. She controlled access to the king. She controlled his ear. And by 1748, she controlled the question that mattered most: who lived and who died at Versailles. But there was one person who knew her deepest secret. That person was Quesnay. The secret was this: Pompadour wasn't simply the king's mistress. She was infertile. In a court where legitimacy and bloodline were currency, where every heir mattered, this was atomic information. If it spread, if the nobility learned that the woman steering France couldn't produce an heir, her entire position collapsed. And Quesnay knew. The physician always knows. Here's what Quesnay didn't know yet. Pompadour had already decided he was a problem. She'd been watching him, watching how he spoke to other courtiers, watching the way knowledge was currency in those hallways. By April 1748, she'd made her decision. The physician would be removed from the board. The machinery moved quietly. Quesnay wasn't arrested. No trial, no accusation. Instead, on April 14th, he was simply removed from his position, exiled from court. The official reason: a diplomatic shuffle, a routine reassignment. No one outside the inner circle knew the truth, that he'd been silenced because of what he'd seen. But exile wasn't enough. I've read the letters myself there in the archives. Pompadour wasn't satisfied with silence. She wanted erasure. She wanted Quesnay's reputation destroyed so thoroughly that if he ever did speak, no one would believe him. So she began spreading rumors, incompetence, moral failing, whispers that followed him like fog. By May 1748, Quesnay was gone. Not dead, not yet, but erased from the machinery of power. His colleagues avoided him. His patients wouldn't see him. The king, who'd once trusted him completely, would no longer acknowledge his name. This is how courts really work, not with daggers, with silence. What Quesnay still didn't understand was the depth of his danger. Pompadour had learned something crucial from watching court politics. A living exile was still a threat. He could write letters. He could find sympathetic ears. He could, at any moment, decide that his silence wasn't worth the cost. And so she began planning something more permanent. In June 1748, just 2 months after his exile, Quesnay fell ill, violently. The symptoms were vague enough to seem natural: stomach pain, fever, weakness. He was attended by physicians loyal to Pompadour. They prescribed treatments. He got worse. By early July, he was dead. The official cause: natural illness. No one questioned it. Quesnay was buried quietly. His death barely registered in court records. But here's what's crucial: no contemporary source definitively proves poisoning. There's suspicion. There's motive. There's the pattern, but certainty, that died with him. What we do know is this: after Quesnay's death, Pompadour's position strengthened. She'd faced a threat and neutralized it. The king depended on her more than ever. And the secret, the infertility that could have destroyed her, remained buried. Safe. Protected by silence and the erasure of the one man who could have spoken. The larger story is this: Quesnay became a footnote, a name in a ledger. Historians debate whether Pompadour actually ordered his death or whether she simply removed an obstacle and let the system finish the work. But that distinction barely matters. The result was identical. Power protected itself, and the weak were erased. Pompadour herself would outlive her victim by 12 years. She died in 1764, still beloved by Louis Roman XV, still wielding influence from her deathbed. Her secret died with her. The infertility remained unconfirmed. The question of Quesnay's death remained open. History rarely provides closure in these stories, but what strikes me after reading the diaries and the letters and the court records is how ordinary it all was. No dramatic confession, no sudden justice, just a man who knew too much, quietly removed from the board, just power protecting itself, just history moving forward, indifferent to the erasure it left behind. The lesson: in courts like Versailles, knowledge was the deadliest weapon, and the people who wielded power understood one thing perfectly: silence could be more permanent than any blade. Quesnay learned that too late. By the time he understood the danger he was in, he was already gone. Subscribe for the next Palace Intrigue. There's a new scandal from European courts every week.